stand in awe within the presence of the Lord, in whom the wisdom of the ages lies, for whom the raging of the sea subsides, the living sacrifice, the only source of life.
My hope is in the Lord, from this time on and evermore. Oh, my hope is in the Lord, forevermore.
His tender mercies come with every rising sun, to meet the sinner in his brokenness, to offer healing and forgiveness. And those who trust in him will find their hearts at rest. Yes, my hope
Is in the Lord, from this time on and evermore. Oh, my hope is in the Lord.
my hope
Is in the
is
Lord,
in the Lord.
this time
Oh,
on
from this time on
and evermore.
and forevermore.
My hope is in the Lord, forevermore. My hope is in the Lord, from this time on and evermore. Oh, my hope is in the Lord, forevermore.
I stand in awe within the presence of the Lord, in whom the wisdom of the ages lies, for whom the raging of the sea subsides, the living sacrifice, the only source of life.
My hope is in the Lord, from this time on and evermore. Oh, my hope is in the Lord, forevermore.
His tender mercies come with every rising sun, to meet the sinner in his brokenness, to offer healing and forgiveness. And those who trust in him will find their hearts at rest. Yes, my hope
Is in the Lord, from this
I stand in awe within the presence of the Lord, in whom the wisdom of the ages lies, for whom the raging of the sea subsides, the living sacrifice, the only source of life.
My hope is in the Lord from this time on and evermore. Oh, my hope.
Good evening, everybody. You have to excuse me, I got a cough drop in, so I'm not coughing as bad tonight. But we're thankful to be here tonight. I want to ask you, if you would, to stand. We're going to open it up in prayer. Ask the Lord to help us tonight, okay? Brother David, you want to go ahead and open us up in prayer?
Father, we come to you tonight. We ask you to help Brother Ken as he brings conclusion to this message he's been bringing us. Father, we pray you help him and give him what you give unto him, unto us. Help him to do it, Father. We pray. Lord, there's a lot of requests here tonight. We know. Father, we just ask you to move on each request, Father. And then spoken, the ones who raised up their hands in their heart, Lord, we just pray you just answer those prayers. We ask you. Just be in this service tonight. We know you're already here because all of us brought you with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
For the record, all of you in the audience, I don't care to do this, so if you're coming, you can do it anytime. All of you that lead singing, I'm totally back up. Anyway, page 34, it is truly wonderful.
Yes, it is.
He pardoned my transgressions, He sanctified my soul, He honors my confessions, since by His blood I'm whole. It is truly wonderful what the
write another verse and hand it in. We'll add it to the congregational hymn books. It'll be our own edition. It's all right. All right. Anyone got any praise this evening?
I testified about the young man while I was sick that I was working with. And today, he had actually seen one of the psychologists, and the psychologist copied me on the note where he met this young man. And that whole note was that young brother testifying to that psychologist. And the psychologist was writing it word for word in the note, saying that veteran, said that he, had received the power of God, that he never felt the power of God like he felt the power of God the other day. And I just, that is just such a blessing to me. Amen. I want to thank the Lord for that. Praise God.
Great, I want to stand and give God praise. Also, I don't want to give the devil an edge. I will get up there and sing every time for God. I mean, I do. I love to sing. When I first started singing in the choir and stuff like that, it was an ongoing joke that I sing Kelby because I just follow along and stuff. But this might sound weird, but I prayed. I said, God, the reason I get so nervous and I sound like a pregnant goat when I start singing is because it's just vain. It's just, I don't want to be embarrassed. It's not, has nothing, because God knows I want to sing for Him. I want to do anything for God. Like Jim said, I'll be right there with her, penciling it in if we get it. But God has helped me so much as far as stepping out and singing. And that sounds a little embarrassing, but I hope you know what I mean by that. Like, I always had a desire to do that, and God's helped me with that, and I thank God for that. I thank God that, He lets me write from time to time for Him. He lets me talk for Him, I just, anything that I can do for God is precious to me because He's done everything for me, everything. I also want to personally thank Him for the last message. I know that he was, he followed the will of God, if anything, for me, because it really resonated. That's been my theme. It's day 11. What are you doing? It's day 12. What are you doing? And it's sad to say I've made some mistakes on day 12 or day 11, but that constant in the back of your mind, the ticking. Before long we're going to be having another New Year's service. And that's not depressing. That's challenging. It's just I want to get out of the boat and go towards Jesus, and I want as many people to go with me as possible. That's the goal. Get in, get out, and take everybody with you. And I just thank God for that. I thank God for this week. Will and I were talking about, we don't want to admit it. We've been very tired. I guess, like people say, chronic not illness, but fatigue is a thing that you deal. It really is a thing after you get COVID, and we've just been warped, And so I'm driving home, and I was like, I'm too tired. We can't go to church tonight. I wouldn't be worth the flip, And so I just kept going on and everything like that. And the service, but in my mind, I knew that this is where I wanted to be, and this is where I would be. God gives you that little. We all know the footprints in the sand. Where God was. There's only one footprint, and that's when I was carrying you. Well, my story is you see him dragging, and Jesus is like, that's when I was dragging you through the sand, and that's so many times He does that for me. Like, come on, Tasha, you got this, you can do this, and I'm that type of person that needs that, and God knows that, and I just thank God for His many blessings. I said it time and time again. We are blessed beyond measure, and I cannot put a cap on it. I cannot. The story cannot be told, but we'll keep trying.
I was thinking when they were singing the song that is saying it was truly wonderful. Well, I think it is wonderful. He brought our little COVID colony along. And, no one got super sick. I think it traveled through all of our family, and it wrecked my New Year's plans. some would say it wrecked my whole year, but no, no, still plenty of year left. Do want to thank God for, His mercy and protection, and His goodness on my brother. He was in the hospital for a few days, and got to come home today. So thankful for that. And the part of that last verse talked about, due to His goodness, I'll live in His employ. And I've had several employers that I did not mind leaving at all. Absolutely didn't mind. When, it used to be, back in the, I don't want to say back in the old days, but, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, people had a greater loyalty to their employer than what they do now. There's a common practice in my field to hop from employer every 2 to 3 years because you're guaranteed to make an additional easy $3,000 to $5,000 every time you move to a different employer because they're going to pay you more than what you're currently making at your old employer. And I've had several people I worked with who they're on their 5th job in the last 7 years, and every time they've scored an additional increase in their annual salary. And I was like, wow, what would, I was like, well, I could do that. But I really like my employer, right? I really like who I work for. I love my people that I work with, and I love my boss, right? And it makes me want to stay there. And I was thinking it's the same thing with Jesus, the things that He does for you. Why would you want to do anything different? Why would you want to go anywhere else? I think if you could talk to anyone who were sick of the life they were living, they would tell you that I'm tired of working for the devil, right? I want to work for someone else, right? They're searching for that new employer, right? And they don't know how to get there, right? And they need us to give them that helping hand. But that last verse just stuck out, Due to His goodness, the concept was I'll live in His employ, and why would you want to do anything else? But, do thank God for His mercy and protection over the New Year's, even if it did wreck my plans, it was okay. Anyone else have any praise or song this evening?
Thank you, Lord, for safe travel and mercy. After the quarantine last week, we decided to go to Ohio to visit church family and make some really stupid, dumb choices and left really late in a horrible snowstorm in West Virginia, and it took us 2 hours longer to get to the hotel that we were trying to get to. It should have taken us 4 hours, it took us 6 hours to get to Charleston because the snow was so bad, and the whole time transfer trucks were just flying by us, and it could have been really bad. There was high wind advisory, and I'm just thankful the whole time I was praying because we didn't tell either of our sets of parents that we were leaving, and I was like, if we get stranded, nobody's going to know it. So I'm thankful that Jesus knows and Jesus takes care of us, and you learn your lessons in life. I'm thankful that He protected us and protected over us.
Amen. It's no joke. There was a guy in Virginia that was on the news, and his house was just 3 miles away, and he didn't make it back home. He had left his mother's or friend's house and was trying to get back home, and he died. If you get lost in a snowdrift, there's not a lot of hope left for you. Anyone else got any praise or song?
I feel thank the Lord. I've had a lot of COVID sick lately, and I'm sorry that you got sick, but I want to thank the Lord that I thought for sure I was going to get sick. I mean, I was around my sister-in-law, this close to her talking. I don't know if it was, a total of 15 minutes or not, but I was like, I'm getting sick, like it's going to happen. She woke up in there, this was Saturday afternoon, she wakes up Sunday morning sick. Like, I'm like, it's coming. And it didn't. And I want to think what it did. And I know I know this route, I know it's very contagious. I'm not saying anything that it's not. I'm just saying, thank the Lord. I'm sorry you all got sick, but I'm really thankful I didn't get it this time. It's coming, I'm sure. But, and I also want to thank the Lord. I know this is probably really silly, but I prayed again, like later, as I saw it increase, and I'm thankful. I think it's gonna snow this weekend. And I thank the Lord for answering Andrea's prayer. It might not, it might go, but it looks like it, and I thank the Lord for that. I know it's silly, but if you ask God for something very specific, absolutely, He hears.
Anyone else got any praise?
I've been praying all day about some that put into service, and I'm a little behind on my praise. Are y'all bear with me? First, I just want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for all that did for my family when we lost family. Everyone was just so amazing and there and available for anything. Anything you ask, and not everybody has that. Very, very few people have that, even in a church. So thank you, everyone, so much. I'm thankful that God was with us during that, and working in hospice. I've been through a lot of death, and I can honestly say that my mom was one of the most beautiful I've ever seen, and I'm thankful. I'm sorry, I know this is way delayed, but it's just one of those things that it comes. I'm thankful for Adam getting out of the hospital. We're really worried about that. I'm very grateful for that, and I'm thankful too. I asked for Christmas. I wanted it's like the pre-story of Corey Kidboon. It's like her life leading up to this. Yeah, and it's like her. She tells the stories of her childhood, and it's called In My Father's House. I never read it, and I was thinking it's such a beautiful story. It's just wow. Every little bit I get to read, it just amazes me how beautiful she lays her childhood out. And I think of how God just really orchestrated her whole life and prepared her for everything that she went through. And she talked several times about prayers that she prayed as a child coming true years later. Like, it's just amazing to me. And I'm so grateful that God does that for us. Just, we don't know where we're at unless we're in it, but He knows exactly, and He knows exactly what's going to happen and where we're going to come out at on the other side. I'm so grateful for that.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Lord, for a good. I am thankful. I guess we're going to hear about it for a while. I guess our congregation didn't get the COVID this time around. But I am thankful for those who didn't get it. But I'm also thankful that God brought everyone through pretty much the flying colors who did get it. I'm thankful none of our older people got it. God knows what He's doing. I mean, we can be right up at the right people's faces, like Drea said, and never get it. And honestly, when they handed me the results of the test, I was totally surprised. I mean, and I never thought I was crazy, but I was like, what? You know, like, what? Wow. So, we don't know. We don't know, do we? And I'm pretty glad we don't know. I am thankful for God just always being right there in every instance in my life. I'm thankful for the times that, and I was telling you and Morgan tonight that when I lay down, and I don't know if it was just so much out of habit, I always had anxiety over Mama from October 1st until she passed on November 30th, just wondering if she was okay or what tomorrow was going to bring. And, you know, I think Brother Cedric preached on muscle memory, if I'm not mistaken. And I guess that's kind of what it is. But all I have to do is, I know what she's done. I know what's in her report. I know she's not thirsty. She's not hurting. She's in a better place. You know, just keep going. I'm not thankful to be a fallible human. I've been telling you, those are some, I'm my biggest trial. I get in my way more than anybody else. But I am so thankful to serve a God that just says, get up and go again. Just keep going. Just keep, even if you're not down, just keep walking. And I'm so appreciative of victory in my life. That is one of the greatest truths that God has ever given me, is that I can walk in victory in Jesus. And I really appreciate that I am not just another old sinner walking around and just doing the best I can. That God has given me a quality because of Him and His Spirit. And every day I can keep the Lord before me and say, God, you hold this day, and you know every second of every minute of every day. And I'm thankful that I can rest in you no matter what comes my way. He will walk me through it. He will walk with me. He'll hold my hand. He'll carry me. Whatever I need to get through it, God will do that. And I really appreciate that.
I think every situation always has two viewpoints. You can be pessimistic about it or optimistic about it. One thing that you find quickly in the military, if your conditions are always less than desirable and your instructions are always less than enjoyable, so you better find something to be happy about very quickly. Hey, anyone else? Have Tommy, you want to come up and take the offering? Preston, you want to help as well? If nothing else, we'll ask the speaker to go ahead and come up for this evening. You got a song, Moon? All right.
Before I sing, I'd like to give some praise. Well, first, I'll start by saying you go ahead and pray for Snow, Andrea. I'm with you. I'm also thankful. I had something else in between this, but I'll jump to this part. So I was very reluctant to go back to work. Didn't want to go, and I'm thankful for my job. I mean, don't get me wrong at all, but, after 2 weeks of not going to work, you don't want to go back. But and I even had a dream, I guess the night before I went to work, saying so they'd moved everything out of my office, and my desk was put in the middle of the office. And in my dream, I'm rationalizing, like, well, maybe they moved me upstairs, Maybe it's okay. But everything was good, and I want to thank the Lord. For the last 3 days, someone has told me, man, I'm glad you're back. So, it's just good to get that feedback, even though most of the time I feel like I'm not doing anything. But obviously they're happy to have me there. And I'm I'm thankful for that. Typically, me and Casey would sing this song together, but I just felt, actually I had another song planned, and it got changed at the last minute, so I'm going to sing this. I remember how you told me this life may not be easy, and everything that I need you've already given me. I remember how you told me that I could trust you completely. So why am I doubting when you've proved that you'd fight for me? And you've walked me through fires, pulled me from the flames. If you're in this with me, I won't be afraid. The smoke billows higher, going higher, and it feels like I can barely breathe. I walk through these fires 'cause you're walking with me. I'm changed by your mercy and covered by your peace. Living out the victory doesn't mean I won't feel the heat. You've walked me through fires, pulled me from the flames. If you're in this with me, I won't be afraid. When the smoke billows higher, going higher, and it feels like I can barely breathe. I walk through these fires 'cause you're walking with me. And I remember how you showed me the price of my redemption. How could I question when you've proved that you died for me? And you've walked me through fires, pulled me from the flames. If you're in this with me, I won't be afraid. When the smoke billows higher, going higher, and it feels like I can barely breathe. I walk through these fires 'cause you're walking with me. I walk through these fires 'cause you're walking with me. Man, thank God for that fourth man who will walk with us, right? That star, you have oxygen, depleted space of oxygen, you can't breathe, and it's when you need Jesus, right? You can take the heat for a little while, but it'll consume you. Absolutely. Anyone else got any praise or song this evening? All right, if not, we'll ask the speaker to come.
to ask you to stand if you would. Preston, would you lift your voice and ask the Lord to help us? Yeah.
Father God, thank you for being here with us today, God. The Spirit that we felt so far, you thank God for being able to get to another week. Many Christians want to hear God's family, they want to hear, like Ken said, we want to hear His voice, we want to hear your voice through Him, dear God. You know, as Peter said, you have the words of life, so you pray to God, you help us to be able to hear something. Yes. That will make us a better Christian as we do the Spirit of God. Help us to hear it and apply it, God. I pray your own in Jesus' name.
Amen. Be seated. I got that turned on, Scott? Okay. So we're going to kind of wrap up tonight the phases of Christian living. And we're going to kind of combine later adulthood on into kind of when we start really aging, when we start getting up in our 60s and 70s and even our 80s, right? They say that, that 60's the new 50 and 70's the new 60, but they're going to have a hard time convincing me of that because 57 feels like 57 to me. I'll be 57 in April, so. But tonight, whenever we think about this phase in our lives, and it's hard if you're younger and you have small children to think about it, but I promise you it comes a lot quicker than what you expect. It seems like that as you start out raising your children and raising your family, that you have these own little sets of trials and struggles when it comes to having your kids out, wanting them to behave, trying to train them to be obedient, trying to teach them, to not misbehave, trying to teach them how to behave in church. You still need to teach your children how to behave in church. You still need to teach your children how to behave in church. You still need to teach your children how to behave in church. They say if you say something 3 times, people get it. So is that hard work? Absolutely, it is definitely hard work. And that training doesn't stop when they get to be teenagers either. Even when they're teenagers, you need to teach your children how to behave in church. But not just in church. I want to tell you that I honestly believe that a lot of that training, if it's done at home, then it will reflect wherever you're at. So if you're not doing it at home, then it's not going to reflect when you're in church or when you're at the grocery store or when you're out and about somewhere. And so it's really important. And this is kind of like the essence of the lesson tonight, because it's really important that you're consistent. Because without consistency, thank you, honey, without being consistent, then it leaves an opening for interpretation of what the individual thinks they need to be doing or not need to be doing. And I'll just tell you that God don't teach us that way. He doesn't leave things open for our interpretation. He actually teaches us and trains us the way that He wants to teach us and train us. And I'm thankful for that tonight. When you start to get a little older and your children start to become adults, it's a new challenge when your children start to become adults. I've heard a lot of people say that they want to always be able to be their children's friend. That's not a good thing to be. It's okay to be your children's friend, but at the same time, your child has to look at you, even as an adult, in a different, light than just being your friend. They have to see you as someone who's been there constant. And this is where I think a lot of folks have failed, especially out in the world, is children haven't seen a constant. They haven't seen mom and dad the same year after year after year after year without change in them as far as going one way or going another, right? So I want to tell you that in this phase of life, it is really important for you to be able to take a role with your children to where they're comfortable enough to come and speak to you as an adult parent, as a parent, and them being an adult. Now, that's a little bit of a challenge within itself, just simply because you're always going to struggle with wanting to be the parent. And sometimes, whether you believe it or not, your adult children are still going to come to you, and they're really seeking parental advice, but they want you to treat them as an adult whenever they're doing that. And that is a hard role to play sometimes, because you automatically want to revert back to being the parent. Like, it's dumb to start out late at night traveling to Ohio in the middle of a snowstorm. Did you guys get that? I got one amen. See, I want us to pay attention to this, because there's a lot of things that actually start to happen in this phase of life. Not only is there the parental things, but you have to really be careful here, because the enemy can come in and really start getting you discontented. I mean, really start getting you discontented. Getting you discontented with life, getting you discontented with your job, getting you discontent with the church, getting you discontent in your marriage, getting you discontent in your relationships with other people. And if Satan can get you discontent, then he'll get you to looking in other directions. And I'm not just talking about in a physical manner, or I'm talking about even in an intimate manner. I'm talking about he'll get you looking in other directions as far as being in church goes. He will keep you busy doing other things other than doing what you need to be doing for the Lord. If you got your Bibles, open up to 1 Timothy chapter 6, and I want to start reading in verse 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. It said here, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. But they that are rich fall into temptations and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." You know, you start to struggle at this age because you're starting not just to look back, but you're also starting to look ahead a little bit. You're starting to wonder what retirement's going to look like. Am I going to be able to retire? Am I going to be able to have enough money to retire? Am I going to have to work and work and work because I'm not saving for that retirement? A lot of different things can start working here. We can start getting to the point to where that we're so discontent with everything that we're doing that nothing satisfies us. If you're a male and you're a brother, one of the things that you're going to struggle with is you're going to start losing some of your stamina when you get to be in your late 40s. You hit your early 50s, and you're going to start losing quite a bit of stamina. You're going to start losing strength. You're going to find out that you can't pick up 2 12-inch block and carry them all the way from the barn up to Grant and Morgan's house anymore like you used to, that you got to stop in the middle and set them down for a little bit and then pick them up and carry them the rest of the way. And you ask yourself the question, what's happening to me? What's changing with me, right? There's so many different things that take place here in this phase of life. All these carnal things begin to affect us spiritually as well. Now, I want to share a couple things with you tonight. The other day, I was going into the VA, and I really had a moment. I was just telling Preston about this. But I was walking in there, and I got to thinking about Brother Clark. And I got to missing him so terribly bad that I almost started weeping going into the building. And I even began to ask myself, God, why do I miss him so bad but I don't find myself missing my dad that bad. When I think about Dad, it's much happier, but when I think about Brother Clark, I become much sadder. And I was thinking, why is that, Lord? It was because Brother Clark was a constant for me year after year after year. He never changed. He was always the same. He always was in church, was always testifying. Everything about him. And I got to thinking about that and thought, I know what his struggles were. I know what his struggles were in his 50s because he shared those with me. I know what his struggles were in his 60s because I was there with him in those years. I even know what some of his struggles were in his 70s. I knew him for almost 25, 26 years, a very long time. And in all of those times that he had those struggles, I still watched him come to church. I still seen him stand up here and try to be as encouraging as he possibly could be. And some folks got tired of his rambling because, Lord bless his heart, he would go on for hours sometimes. And people would say, Brother Ken, can you not shut him down a little bit? I am so thankful that I have those times to remember. And I want to tell you that in this phase of our Christian walk, our young people, our young married couples, they need us to be those constants. They're called pillars in the Old Testament. Those people who were doing the same thing day in, day out, living it day in, day out. That they can watch your testimony. That they can see when you're struggling in your marriage, that somehow you get through it. That they see that when you're struggling with your finances, that somehow you're getting through it. That they see when you have a death in your family of someone who's really close to you, that you're getting through it. Because brothers and sisters, I'll tell you what that does. That helps to increase their faith. Think about this role in the context of our children. If our children don't see their parents playing this very important role in their adult lives, then they're going to struggle because they're not going to have these people who are these constant persons of victory, of testimony, of will, of consistency, of desire. And I'm telling you, we play a very important role in the church in this age. Brother Norwood's called me for the last 2 days. He was calling last night, and I seen the phone ring, and I knew he wanted to talk about the scriptures, and my voice was shot, and I was tired, and I was fixing to go to bed, and I said, I'll call him in the morning on the way to work. I got up this morning, and I was absolutely exhausted. If you haven't had COVID or you have had COVID, I'm telling you, the fatigue is ridiculous. It's like you get up and somebody's put a 500-pound anchor around your neck. And I felt that way this morning, so I'm telling you, I just barely got to work. I'm like, I'm just going to get to work and get through the day. And then he called me a little later in the day, and I was with the veteran then, and he left me this voicemail. And this was his voicemail. I called him back. Finally, I left him a voicemail. I said, sorry I missed your call, brother. I meant to call you back. But he said, brother, he was so excited. He said, brother, I was looking at that scripture that we were talking about the other day. And he said, and I looked in Corinthians. And he said, my eyes went right to this place in Corinthians. And he said, brother, I am convinced that God's Holy Spirit shared this with me. And I'm not going to tell you what it was because he's going to be here Sunday, and I guarantee you he'll tell you what it was. I promise you he will. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. But I know when he calls, he wants to talk about the scripture. These people are so important in our lives. These people you and I need to understand that's who we need to be working towards becoming. That's who that we need to make sure that we're not allowing the cares of this life, especially in this phase of life, because your children move out, you got an empty nest, you got to be careful about getting wrapped up in the world and wanting to do a lot more things in the world, because the devil will steal your time. I'm going to tell you something tonight, and I've said it many times, but the devil don't mind you working on any project and missing church. He don't mind you doing that. He don't mind you working on the car and missing church. When there could be other times when you could figure that out. You know what I'm going back to? I'm going back to Brother Clark's testimony. He said, a brother told me one time, Bjorn, if I was going to rob you, I'd come on a Wednesday or a Sunday. What a testimony. What a testimony. You know, I think about different ones who's been in our lives, those people who we have seen in their later years, once their children are grown. And I think about how important it is to be this person, to be that person who has godliness and contentment. Because with godliness and contentment, the promise is gain. And that's not worldly gain, that's actual spiritual gain. That's actually growing in the things of God. You will not grow in the Spirit or in the Word as long as you are not godly and you are not content with being being a Christian. You're not going to grow. So this role is really, really important. Now, I thought about this in the context of Bible characters. And I'm going to go back and read one. Let's go to Ruth chapter 4, verse 13. Man, what an example that Ruth was. So much so, she had so impressed her daughter-in-law. Man, God help you mother-in-laws. If you're a mother-in-law tonight, God help you mother-in-laws to be able to have the testimony of, I love my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is a godly person. Ruth had so impressed Naomi, so impressed her, that she left her family, left her kinsmen, right? It's a beautiful story. Let me go to Ruth. I want to read this to you. No, all you got to do is find it. I got the tabs and can't see it. Isn't that bad shape, see? That's what you got to look forward to. You know why? Because I ain't back far enough. There it is. If you go to Ruth chapter 4, verse 13, I want to read this to you. So, I had them mixed up. I had the names mixed up. Naomi and Ruth. I had them switched around. You know what I was talking about though, right? So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that this name may be famous in all Israel, And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life and a nourisher of thine old age, for thy daughter-in-law which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. Naomi made such an impression on Ruth. Such an impression that she chose to follow her God. I wonder what kind of impression that we're making in this stage of our lives. This is also a stage of our lives when people are going to generally look at us as people who are supposed to be wise. Well, as soon as you open your mouth, we can find out whether there's any wisdom there or not. That's so true, because that's what tells on whether or not we're wise. It's what we say. It's not only what we say, but it's also what we do and how we behave ourselves. It's also when you're sitting in a group and something is said and everybody else is saying things, and somebody's sitting there watching you going, why ain't Scott saying nothing? Why ain't Preston saying anything? Because there's wisdom in being able to hold your tongue. There's wisdom in that. At this point, I want to tell you that if you're not careful in this stage of life, you will ruin and destroy your influence. If you are not careful, you'll destroy it. This is a time when people are going to come to you and ask you questions about what life is really like and how'd you get through this. I thought about this after I read this about Ruth and Naomi, and I'll tell you where my mind went. My mind went straight to Caleb. So Caleb and Joshua were two of the 12 who were chosen to go spy out the land and to come back and give a report to Israel in Numbers, the 13th chapter. And so they go over, and God had told them a little bit about the land and had promised them what it was, and they come back, and all of the spies who went over are saying, it is what God said it is. They got grapes, the clusters that they hang in between poles, and two guys carry them. And, but then all the other spies, except for Joshua and Caleb, said, but they're giants and we are grasshoppers in their sight. In the scripture, when you read it, way back in the book of Numbers, it says, but Caleb had a different spirit. So probably Caleb's in his late 30s, early 40s whenever this is happening. And then whenever judgment comes from God, you don't hear anything else about Caleb. Did you notice that? For 40 years, we hear nothing else about Caleb. And I see this guy who's just with the children of Israel, who's just that constant. Not saying anything, not up front. He's that one who's saying, I'm going to tell you something. You remember, and I believe he went and told the young ones this. You remember what God said? You remember that God, I seen it. It's over there. It's real. Brothers and sisters, we need a testimony in this age. Excuse me. At this phase of life, we need a testimony that indicates to the young ones that faith is real. We need a testimony at this point that gives the young ones the incentive to keep going. We need a testimony at this age that really inspires the young ones to say, I want a double portion of his spirit whenever I leave here. I want a double portion of her spirit whenever they leave here. I thought about Caleb and how no doubt it was a struggle for him at different times when they had all these conflicts and the children of Israel. Oh, man. Please pray for us. When he's seen Israel time and time again sin, and then he's seen God's judgment fall on him, He wasn't the one sinning. He wasn't the one who was complaining and saying, would to God we were back in the flesh pots, by the flesh pots in Egypt. That was not that man. He stayed constant. He stayed true. He stayed devoted. And I believe that he went through the children of Israel, and as the older ones would die off, he would tell the younger ones. Now remember, I want to tell you something. I seen over there. It is a land that flows with milk and honey. The grapes are so large that they have to carry them. And I want to tell you something. I want to remind you of something. God promised us that we could have it. That's our land. And when it comes time to get ready to go take it, you guys need to be encouraged, because God's going to give it to us because he promised it to us. Are we that person? Are we that person in this phase of our lives? In this stage of our lives, are people looking at us as people who are holy, people who are godly, people who have faith, people who are filled with the Spirit, people who have wisdom, people who have knowledge, people who have understanding, people who know that they're going to, when they come to you, that they know that you're going to seek out God to get the right answer for them. What a testimony to have in this stage of life. This is where we need to be. The aged man need to be sober, temperate, sound in faith. If we're not that person at this age of life, then we've got some adjusting to do. I thought about Caleb, and as I thought about him, I thought whenever they come to his mountain, and he looked over at Joshua and he said, Moses promised me that mountain when he was leading us. And I am just as able today to take that mountain as I was 40 years ago. He was 85 years old, and bless God, he's standing at that mountain with his sword drawn, saying, I am ready to take what God's given me. We have got to have these kind of people in our lives to encourage us to take the mountain because God promised it to us. Now ask yourself this question. How many of those people do you know exist in your life? It's a good question. You know, I'm always talking about dying early. My boss was saying something the other day. She told me yesterday, she said, you need to go home. You look horrible. I said, I feel horrible, and I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going home. And I come home, and I laid down in the chair, and I went to sleep for about an hour because I was just exhausted. I was so tired. And she said something the other day. We was having a meeting, and she said, Ken's dying on us. And I said, I hope so. And I forgot the group that I was with, right? Because, I mean, there's like 4 doctors in there, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. And I seen their faces, and I stunned them. And I'm like, I can't get out of this now. So I said, no, really. I'm not worried about it. It's okay. I'm telling you, I told him, I said, it's okay if I die today. Okay, let's just get on with the meeting. You know, Scott's always telling me, you're going to live to be 100. I hope and pray to God, if his prayer comes true and I live to be 100, I'm going to pray he lives to be 105. I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't. But I know this, that if God lets me live, that there's 2 things I want in this life. One is to not leave an unfinished task. Because I believe there are designated tasks for me to complete here on this earth in my phases of life. And as I look back on my Christian life, I feel like I've accomplished a lot of those. I feel like I've missed a lot, but I feel like I've accomplished a lot. And as I look forward into my Christian life, I'm always asking God, what role can I play to make a difference in your kingdom. So the main thing is, I don't want to leave an unfinished task. The other thing is, I want God to help me keep my mind so that at 85, 86, or 96 years old, you see me standing back there and standing up and giving God praise. I want to be praising God whenever I leave this world. If you go to Job chapter 32, the book of Job chapter 32, I want to say to you tonight that I've had these people in my life. I have. I could name many of them. Many of them that I've had, and I'm thankful for that. But I don't know about you, but I want to say this, that it seems like the number is decreasing. Number's getting smaller. And so where does that leave you and I who are in this phase of life when we're in our 50s? And we're approaching our 60s and we're approaching our 70s. What kind of a testimony do we have? What kind of a witness do we have? You know, the Bible teaches us that you should have a good report without and within. Now this needs to be a balance because not everybody's going to be happy with you. You're not going to please everybody. You can forget that. I had an incident at work the other day. It was horrible. I took the worst cussing I've taken in 30 years since I've been a Christian. I didn't take one, I took 3. And boy, it tested me. I mean, it genuinely tested me. And I had this desire to feel angry towards this man. I've had this desire to feel justified in telling him things. But I'll tell you what I did. When he left, I got down and prayed for him. And I've prayed for him every day since he left. And I talked to him on the phone today, and he said, "Can I get an appointment with you?" I said, "You sure can, brother." I'll tell you something, that wasn't me 30 years ago. No, 30 years ago, I lost that job. Job says in chapter 32, and I don't know if you do a lot of reading in Job, but I want to tell you that when you do your regular reading, if you're doing like reading 3 chapters a day, when you come to the book of Job, Job's actually considered a poetic book. But when you come to the book of Job, I want to encourage you to slow down a little bit. I want to encourage you to read the depth of what Job is saying to these men. Because there's so much substance in his words that you'll see that there's times that he's telling them about God and they don't even know what he's talking to them about. Because they're just so wrapped up in their judgment towards him. But in Job chapter 32 and verse 7 it says, "I said, days should speak and multitude of years should teach wisdom. But there is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding. Great men are not always wise, neither do aged men understand judgment. Therefore I said, hearken to me, I also will show you mine opinion. Behold, I waited for your words, I gave ear to your reasons, whilst ye search out what to say." While you searched out what to say. "Yea, I attended unto you, and behold, there was none of you that convinced Job or that answered his words." You know what he's saying to them? I gave you an opportunity. But Job is telling them it was God speaking through me. Oh, whenever we speak, that it is seasoned with the Spirit of God to the point where people are edified by it, or even if it's chastisement, because it was given in so much love, they actually receive it. That's wisdom. In Psalms 92, this wisdom doesn't just come. This wisdom doesn't just come from living to be an old age. This wisdom comes from diligently seeking God. And I believe that all of us seek God, but I believe that all of us could question with how much diligence that we seek Him. I don't want to be a person who just throws words out. And I'll tell you, I got to work on something because I'm really struggling with it at this point in my life. Is I've tried to really slow down and listen to people, and not talk so much. But then when I've listened so much and I feel like God has given me something to say, or I feel like that I have something at that point to say, and you start to say the least little thing, you just start to engage in the conversation, and automatically you're cut off because the person wants to talk more and more and more. Because we're not in a listening culture, we're in a talking culture. So I want to encourage you to slow down and listen. Slow down and listen. The psalmist David said in chapter 92 of Psalms, beginning in verse 12, it said, "The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree, and shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age, for they shall be fat and flourishing." You know what he's talking about here? Brothers and sisters, if you've lived for God 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, you should be fat and flourishing in spiritual things. You should be bringing forth fruit that is almost even rarer, or at least more ripe, if you will, to those who are younger, to where that they look at you as an example, as a person that they want to be like, as someone that they look to, that they can get answers from because they know that you'll seek out God for them. I want you to see how important this phase of life is, not only to your family, but to the church, which should be your family as well. He goes on and he says here, to show that the Lord is upright, He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in Him. I want to say tonight that people see the righteousness of God, they see the mercy of God, they see the wisdom of God, they see the kindness of God and the love of God through you and me. And the longer that you've been doing this, the more of that you ought to have. If you don't have it, then you need to begin to question what has gotten in the way. What are the stumbling blocks that have entered into my spiritual experience to where that I'm not one of these people that Brother Ken shared with us at this age of my life? For those of you who are younger, it's not too late for you to be this person. For those of us who are middle-aged, it's not too late for us to be this person. Even for us who are old, it's not too late to be this person if you have the desire. If the desire is not there, then all you're going to be is just another seat in the congregation It's maintaining your salvation, getting through day by day. Just trying to make it day by day. Never no encouragement, wisdom, power to offer the rest of the body. God help us. It's a very important place in life. It's very, very important. One of my daughters come to me one time, and I've shared this with you before, but she said, "Daddy, I need you to take your daddy hat off and put your pastor hat on." And that meant a lot to me. It really did. It meant a lot to me because she was asking me for godly advice. You know, some of the young people here will call me at different times and they'll ask me certain things. They'll say, "Brother Ken, can I ask you about something? This is bothering me." And as soon as they ask me that question and I know it's important to them, the very first thing that I do, the very first thing that I say is, "God, please help me answer this the right way," because it's important to them. God, give me the wisdom to know what to say to them in this situation. I hope tonight that the lesson has encouraged us to be one of these people. I want to be that Caleb standing at the bottom of the mountain with my sword drawn saying, "Let's go get them." God help us tonight. Let's stand. Can somebody come just sing a verse? Just one verse. You can sing anything. I don't care what it is. Except for "The roll is called up yonder." I don't want you to sing that. I just want to give somebody an opportunity to pray if they want to come and pray. You know what? It's okay, Tosh. We actually don't even need a verse. It's fine. Maybe, Scott, if you could just play a little bit, because I did catch you off guard. I'm sorry about that. If others need to come, maybe we don't just need the song, but just the music. Maybe you can come and say, "Lord, help me to be that person. Help me, God. Help me to take this part of my life serious. Help me to grow in you." That's what the series has been about you growing as a Christian, about the struggles that you may have had in your life. Is there anyone else who needs to come? Amen. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Is there any prayer requests tonight before we dismiss?